Hello all, welcome to another endgame study of the Solving Other Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This composition was created by Jaroslav Polášek. It's white to play and to win. As always, I suggest you watch the guide if you haven't, so you are better prepared for the practice. After the main countdown of 10 minutes will start, and I catch you up to begin the guided solution when it ends. And let's go to the solution. Of course, over here we have more or less a simple position to look at because it's white to play and to win. So very fast we see, okay, maybe we can keep the bishop and the knight, that's an idea, and grab the rook and the pawn from black, so we have a possible win for us. And the other options, more natural, more obvious, of course, it's to go with one pawn promoted to a queen but without allowing the rook to take it. So the most natural first continuation should be to go and grab the pawn, which we are immediately seeing by the two question marks that I place over here, that doesn't work. But we need to find why it doesn't work. Of course, it's not that hard. We just grab the knight with the rook. Now, for white to be able to promote the pawn, it not only needs to bring the pawn to the eighth rank, but avoiding the rook to take it. So maybe we try to bring the bishop, but of course now the king can take the b2 pawn. Maybe we advance the pawn now, so let's say we go b7, but now the rook can go to the 8th rank and from there control the promotion of the pawn, so it's not possible for white to win it anymore. Let's say we move the bishop, of course the rook can't take the bishop, otherwise we get the queen over the board again. So the rook stays there and we approach our black king. Let's say we now move the king, we move also the king, and when the king presses the rook just keeps on the same rank. Let's say it goes to h8, which forces white to try another move. Let's say let's go with the bishop and try to block the access to the rook for the promotion of the pawn, but this doesn't work because when the bishop reaches the 8th rank blocking the access to the pawn, well, we have rook g7, it's a check, the king moves and we grab the pawn, we sacrifice the rook, of course, and white it's just going for a draw from here. So this was the first try, but the one that we need to calculate very fast. And basically the idea is go with the candidate move and then find a way for the defense to stop it. Other possible move that I calculate was this one, but okay, very fast we see, okay, the pawn is just grabbing our pawn, so next move is threatening to grab the other one. So let's say we are forced to take it, and now just we are just losing the knight, and so from here it's impossible. The rook is just going to control the promotion either with the 8th rank or directly going to c2 and sacrifice from behind. So it's not possible. It was not working very fast. Other idea is, of course, to move the knight so we can block the access of the rook to the pawn, but here black just can take the pawn even if you take back. Then black can even take the sacrifice of the pawn. Notice that it's check, so there is no trick about the bishop coming and grabbing the rook and from that keeping the two pieces that we need. So over here we need to grab the rook, and of course not enough material to go for a win from here. So let's go to the starting position again. After these candidate moves, we need to find the remaining one, the only possible way to go, which is to go with the pawn c6. Of course, sacrificing the rook now, it's not enough, because then we keep the two white pieces, which are enough to go for a win. So it's black to play, and over here black has two options. Let's see the most natural one, which is to go with the rook grabbing the knight. So let's pause on this variation. It's 1 more minute. Pause if you need more, and then show me how can white go for a win in this line. And let's see what's going on with this line. Of course, we have just lost our knight, so we need to keep 1 pawn to promote. But if we advance the pawn directly, well, it's not that hard. First, black just takes the pawn with a check, and if the king goes, let's say, to a6 to avoid another check on the c file, well, the rook doesn't need the check at all, just goes to the c2 file. So we are behind the pawn. There's no way the pawn is going to be promoted without being lost. So let's say we just protect it, and of course the rook can sacrifice, and just without enough material, white is not going to avoid a draw on this position, of course. And the other option, well, not many. Let's say we go with the bishop to grab the b6 pawn. It's the same idea. The rook grabs the pawn, b2 check, the king moves, we go behind the pawn. There's no way to stop it, and even if it's protected by the bishop, we don't care with as black, because we are just going to get a draw on this situation. So the only way to save the day with this one is to find the brilliant bishop sacrifice. So we sacrifice the bishop. So now we are cutting not only the access to the 8th rank, but if the rook comes to c2, of course, we are just going to place the bishop on c3, and from here we are very sure that we are going to use the king to promote the pawn. I don't know if you need to see more, but basically we are just going to push the pawn, forcing the rook to sacrifice, and in the end we keep 1 pawn with our bishop, which is now enough to go for a win from here. But of course we need to find this brilliant idea, and if the rook takes, it's even easier. We just advance the pawn. Now the rook can't go neither to the 8th rank, because the pawn will just take it, of course, neither coming to c4 to take it from behind. So we get a queen for sure over the board, so it's not possible anymore for black to escape a defeat. And of course, because black also sees this one brilliant move, it goes to the other side, so it checks our king. Another minute for you. Pause if you need more. What should we do with white on this situation? And it's not easy to see, but we need to go with the king to c4. This is the only way to go for a win. Because let's say we try to go around. What happens over here? Well, it's similar to what we saw before. The rook just takes the knight, and now it's controlling the advancing of the pawn, either behind or going to the 8th rank. But behind is very, very fast, and we already know this is just a draw. Other possibilities from white going to a4 doesn't change much on the situation. So we get control either the 8th rank or going to the c2 file. So not possible for white. So the only way is to go. Of course, blocking with the knight is just stupid. Like just can shake it or take the bishop and then control the 8th rank. So don't lose time with those moves. And the idea here is simple. Of course, we see that going to c4, we are going to suffer a check from the rook c2. Of course, going with the rook taking the knight. Now it's not easy for black. It will be just a loss, because you can use the bishop checking the king, and when the king move, we are going to take the pawn down, so we get a queen. So of course, over here, it's not what black is going to do. It's going to check our king. And this is the first moment why we went to c4, because now we can go to b3, and not only attacking the rook, because we are also threatening checkmate in one. Notice that the knight is controlling the escape square for the king. So if the rook takes the pawn, this is really easy. We just go and checkmate black. Of course, black won't take the pawn, but will take the knight. We are expecting this. So another minute. Now, what is the move for white in this situation? And I hope you have played it. It's the brilliant sacrifice from the bishops. It's the only way to go for a win. We offer the bishop to win this one. Why? Because if you go advancing the pawn directly, which looks okay, how can we stop the pawn now? Well, not that hard, because the rook can check the king. Now the king needs to decide one side. Let's say it goes to c3, but now we can use our king to control the access to the c2 square. So if the pawn now promotes, of course, we just check it from and we get the skewer and grab the queen, which is not good for white anymore, because now we are facing a draw. But of course, it's almost just black that can play for a win from here. Of course, we are not going to take the pawn over here, otherwise we are going to lose the bishop, because the rook can pin the bishop and then it's black, it's going to play. So over here we just need to go with the king to save the day with the draw. But of course we are not going to do this thing. We are not going to advance the pawn. We are going to sacrifice our bishop, as we saw, so forcing black to take it. And of course now the idea is we are already controlling the c4 square, so we need to control the h square. So now it's the moment to advance the pawn. So we are threatening to promote in one. Black checks our king, and final moment for us. Another minute. Pause if you need more. Now, where should the king go in this situation? It's for white to keep a win until the end. And let's learn a bit about theory of the endgame of rook versus pawn. Because here we have basically two options. Either we go with the king before, or we just bring the king to c2 with the idea, okay, we are now attacking the rook, so next move we are guaranteed to get a queen over the board. But the problem is, of course, if you go over here, well, the rook has this interesting square where we can get support from our pawn. So if we promote to the queen, well, we are just going to get this fork, forcing the queen to take, and then, of course, we just finish the day with a draw, which is not good. And this position you could have learned with the lesson about moving downstairs. It's an important lesson, an important theoretical position from the rook versus pawn endgame. you can check the video if you want. And also I suggest that if you are interested in this maneuver, get to see the video that I made about Troitsky's study about this maneuver. It's a very interesting video, so if you want a list a bit of extra entertainment on this kind of maneuver, well, really suggest you watch the Troitsky study about this one. You are really going to enjoy how he made a composition so interesting based on this one. So let's not waste more time with the theory. Let's see what happens if we now go with the main idea, of course, of the king going to b4. Only way for the rook to keep things alive is to check again, but now we go up again, the rook goes again, and now what happens? We grab that supporting pawn of the rook coming to c5. So now it's the beginning of the cheer, so let's move downstairs. So we are check and we keep moving downstairs until this position. It's more or less the same position, but without black pawn. So now we are able to go with the king c2, removing every square from the black to control either on the 8th rank or on the c file. Black will try a last maneuver, which is also very theoretical over here. And the idea is, if we promote to a queen, we are going to be surprised with this sacrifice. And when we take the rook, well, we end up with stalemate in the enemy king and getting a draw. But of course, we are now mature enough, we have experience, we are not going to fall into this one, and we already know that we need to promote, but with a rook. Why? Now, if it's sacrifice, it's not the same thing. We just grab the rook, thank you very much. The king moves, and then it's checkmate. And so, to avoid checkmate, notice that we are now threatening checkmate in one on the a file. The rook protects, but then the king just attacks the rook. So either black loses the rook or it's checkmated again on the first rank. So a long one, probably not that hard on the end, I believe, if you are more aware or less aware of the theory. I hope you have enjoyed this one, and I expect to see you in future videos. As always, bye bye and keep checking.